Let me start with saying this day started really shitty. I went to the venue, I saw that smearing referring to you. Then we had police, we have police here, and we did it. So... So before we start this panel, let me give you... Can you keep it up for a second? Can you keep it? Can you put it up again? Because I was just told that here you see one of 9 existing quilts which have the title Children of Gaza, and each panel pays tribute to a child who has been killed in Palestine. The creator was here. I don't know if she is here. And we will start again with Laila and Asa Luzon reading from A Million Kites, a collection of testimonies and poems from children in Gaza.
Take Me to the Sky, a poem by Judy Islim, 11 years old, Gaza. Take me to the sky where the stars shine. Yeah? What?
Groß Applaus for the tech.
Tech. Again? You have it? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Take me to the sky where the stars shine. Take me to the stars that live with peace. We can live together. We can be stars. We don't need a roof to live with love. We only need the people in our hearts.
This is from a child of around 9 years old, or they were 9 years old, back in October 2023. هي
It's hell, it's hell.
والله هي
I swear it's hell.
بعرفها من شعراتها.
I know from her hell, it's hell.
ليش يا رب أخذتها مني؟
Why did you take her away from me, God?
ليش أخذتها مني يا الله؟
Why did you take her from me?
مش قادرة أعيش بدونها.
I swear I can't live without her.
This is a child named Amal Ramzi Nusair, who was around 11 years old back in October 2023. I saved my books. They mean the world to me. I used to take them everywhere I went, and my certificates, all of them. I took my brothers as well. I loved to learn. If my books got destroyed, my whole childhood would be destroyed. I would have lost everything. I want to become an engineer. My dream would have been destroyed. I was studying that night. I put everything in my backpack, just in case. So when it did happen, I took them all with me.
This is from a child, 9 years old, around. In Gaza, it was taken from December 2023. The children of Palestine have died. There are no children left. All the girls in my class died. They all died. They all died. My relatives all died. There's no one left. There's no one left. Everyone in my class died. I'm the only one left. I wish I was in heaven too.
This is a poem by a child named Maryam al-Khatib. I will read it in Arabic, and Asaf will read it in English. أيها الموت انتظر قليلا. أريد أن يسألني كيف سأختاره. وحيدة ممتلئة سعيدة. أريد أن يخبرني لأرتب خصال شعري جيدا وأعد النجوم لآخر مرة. أريد من هذا الموت أن ينتظر قليلا. هناك تحت الرمال رأسي وفي السماء يدي. أريد أن أموت بيدين ورأس واحد وأحلام كثيرة.
Oh, death, just wait a moment. A poem by Maryam al-Khatib. I want him to ask me how I will choose him. Alone, full, happy. I need him to warn me so I can fix my hair and count the stars one last time. I need death to wait for just a moment. In the sands over there is my head, and in the sky, my hand. I want to die with 2 hands and 1 head, and many dreams.
This testimony was given by a child named Darin al-Bayya, who was 11 years old at the time and speaking from Qatar, where she was receiving medical care after she had been evacuated from Gaza in February 2024.
I heard someone say,
Darin al-Bayya,
so I woke up. Then I heard them say
that her father, her mother, her brother, her whole family was killed.
So I asked.
Me?
They said.
Yes.
I told them, no, my parents didn't die. They're still here. I told them, you're liars. You are lying to me. They weren't murdered. They are still alive. I was in a coma for 15 days. I couldn't remember anything that happened to me. I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't remember how I looked like. I couldn't remember anything. But I remember, I think, that I saw my father in front of me before he was martyred. The house was full. They were all killed, all of them. Only me and Kenan were taken out of the rubble. We were the only ones who survived. Why aren't we like other people's children? I really want to understand. Why do they do this to us?
This one is from a child of around 13 years old in Gaza back in February 2024. And she delivered this message in English and with such clarity. I'm talking on behalf of thousands of children in Gaza. We have been under a brutal siege for over 135 days. No food, no water, no medicine. Our message to the world is this: shame on you. How dare you feed your children and watch us eat animal food? Are you waiting for us to die? Shame on you. Our message to world leaders is this: we're not asking you to fight Israel. We're asking you for food. Are you waiting for us to die? If we get killed, from our blood, flowers will grow.
My wish is to travel, to get to a hospital and get prosthetic arms, so I can hold the ball with my hands, so I can play, so I can write, so I can eat.
This is a poem by Zaina Abukwik, who was 13 years old at the time, originally written in English. Am I free if I become an object? It was an ordinary Friday, like any other Friday. We went to my grandparents' house for lunch. The smell of oozy rice wafted through the house. We gathered around the table, started eating, talking, and laughing. And suddenly, we heard loud noises, one after another. We left our plates. Our chairs fell to the ground, and our hearts sank with them. We realized that those were the sounds of the occupation's missiles, and it was terrifying. I lived 2 days of fear. Every time the sound of explosions returned, fear came back to my heart, and I started looking for a place to hide. I hid inside the paintings of artists who paint freedom. People might be free in the painting, but they are not free in reality. They are trapped, as if in a prison. Or maybe I hid in the sea where no one could find me, and I could move from one place to another like a bottle of oil someone threw on the shore. Am I free if I become an object, like a box, a lid, or a piece of wood? I swim wherever I want. I go and come until the sea carries me someplace else. Then I become free, without constraints, not in a painting, not in reality, but free in my imagination.
This is from a 7-year-old child. You want to introduce him?
I mean, it's enough to say that he's a 7-year-old child he had a big smile on his face and was very proud of what he was doing.
I'm selling paper planes for the little kids. He's 7. They have nothing to play with because of the war, so they can play with these paper planes and paper toys, things like that. I make them, I sell them, then I buy a new notebook and make some more.
We'll leave you with one final child. We have the original video here.
كيف حالك؟
الحمد لله.
ايش بتسوي؟
بزرع.
ليش بتزرع؟
عشان تصير حلوة.
حياك الله يكرمك الله يجزاك خير.
Thank you all for listening, and thank you for being here.
Okay, so the last video is the last testimony from this tiny book, A Million Kites. The heaviest, no doubt, 113 grams you will ever hold. This tiny book is our resistance. So far, in the 9 months since we published the book, with the enormous support of this resistance, thank you, we have sold over 6,000 copies, spreading the word. Spreading the words of the children of Gaza to 38 countries around the world, and donate over 26,000 euro to organizations on the ground who support the children of Gaza. A Million Kite is also translated to German, developed into an educational toolkit and into a theater play in London. So how did we do it? Well, it's not us, it's this tiny book who did it. It's the children of Gaza with their own words who did it. It's this resistance who did it. We just created space for this to happen. Two artists creating space for what they want to talk about. Imagine that. We good Europeans and free, very free spirits, as my boy Nietzsche used to say. Not as a compliment, mind you, rather as a challenge, maybe a task. Simply to use the freedom that we here still do have in order to create change. Imagine that.
After 16 months of a televised genocide, 16 months of crushing silence from governments, institutions, and individuals, 16 months of apathy from those we held dear, I often find myself at a loss for words, and I'm in the business of words. The absurdity of unfolding events and the reactions to them have driven so many of us to the brink of delirium. Because how can something so obviously horrific not move everyone into action? We can stand here and state fact after terrifying fact, but we will not, because we have no doubt that you all already know. And the truth is clear. And more importantly, it is accessible. There is nothing complicated about genocide, or apartheid, or occupation, or ethnic cleansing, and there never, ever was. To claim otherwise is the result of a decision made to look away, to twist the truth, to suit certain narratives, to refute it not with fact, but with feeling, and to place oneself and one's privilege above everything else, above the lives and well-being of others. We live in a time when the answer to the slaughter of children is, but what about? Shoo, but what about? Anything that follows is simply unacceptable. The three-letter conjunction itself, but, is not only acceptance, but justification of the most horrific thing we have witnessed in our lifetime. What future are we hoping for when these words casually spill out of our mouths in response to genocide? What is the point, truly, what is the point of anything good that we do if the children, our children, don't always come first? We are both Berlin-based artists, a children's book author and an illustrator. We live in a city of artists, a city that artists have flocked to for the privilege of creating honest art freely, without restrictions. And yet, here we are, in a city of politicians telling us how to art and not to art, and of artists too scared to speak the truth. Selective advocacy for life and love and justice and equality and children is simply not. Art that caters to the sensibilities of the government is simply not. This reality cannot stand. And so we fight and we resist and we persist. We owe it to ourselves and to our children. Our very existence depends on it. This collection of poems and testimonies is an oral history given by the most vulnerable people in Gaza. It's irrefutable truth distilled to its purest form. We invite you to check it out. We were supposed to have copies today, but alas, things did not go as planned, as we all know. But you can find it online very easily, amillionkites.com. Please get copies for yourselves, get copies for the people in your lives, especially those people who are sleepwalking through this, and we all know that we have those people in our lives. Sit with every child and listen to their pain and to their joy and to their pleas. Let these truth tellers move you and give you the moral courage to always do the right thing. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but there are people watching, and I hope they can benefit from this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep going. I just want to say, it's easy to despair, but please do not despair. Keep going and keep pushing and push harder. We are in this together, and together we fight, and together we resist, and Palestine will be free.
Thank you so much, you too. Now let me welcome to the stage. I'll start again with Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories. Let me say, you cited this, that former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, said that the Special Rapporteurs are the crown jewel of the United Nations system. You are one of the brightest, if not the brightest right now. You came into the room. I heard from the public. We're all quite down, from the things that happen. And you have the wittiness, you have the charm, you have the humor. And maybe in these times, this is exactly the mixture that we need in order to get the strength to go on. Thank you very much for being here. I welcome to stage Eyal Weizman, British-Israeli architect. He's professor of spatial and visual cultures at Goldsmiths University in London and founder of forensic architecture. We showed his documentary Rebel Architecture in the beginning of this afternoon. Forensic architecture is an interdisciplinary research platform that uses spatial analysis and 3D modeling in unmasking human rights violations. You are a member of the ICC Technology Advisory Board, and interestingly, something I read is that one of your latest projects, referring to something that Francesca said, is an investigation on the genocide perpetrated by Germany against the Nama and Ovaherero by Imperial Germany in what is today Namibia. Maybe you want to tell us more about this later. Later, not now. In a bit. The man who was playing for us several times since the afternoon, Professor Michael Barenboim, violinist and music professor at the Barenboim-Said Academy, son of Daniel Barenboim, the famous conductor and founder of the West Eastern Divan Orchestra. And you've been a very loud pro-Palestinian voice in these days, a soothing one. People saw you on stage at demonstrations, in social media, at the Federal Press Conference, and we are very, very grateful to have you, Michael. And Qassem Massri, you're a pediatrician. You work in an intensive care unit hospital here in Berlin. You're originally from Gaza, and you were part of an interdisciplinary medical team allowed to enter Gaza last April. You were, in fact, one of the last to enter shortly after Israel banned the entry of Palestinian medical volunteers and banning practically, as you said, like 80% of the medical aid, medical volunteers. Thank you for being with us. And Melanie Schweizer, you are a lawyer. Until recently you worked as a civil servant at the German Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. I say until recently. You still do? Okay, but I saw on Democracy Now! Actually that you have been dismissed. I wasn't supposed to say that. Okay, you are in between situations for your engagement for Palestine, and you will speak more about that in a minute. And on podium again, Wieland Hoben from the Jewish Voice.
Just co-moderator.
And you're the co-moderator. Yes. So, my dear Francesca, are you in the mood of starting, or do you want to just have a bit of time since you said that you are already tired?
Depends. I've talked a lot, so I think it would be fair to give the floor to others.
Okay, since Eyal was keen on starting to speak, maybe.
She's very good at reading.
Okay, so just a bit on the structure. We don't have so much time. We have all of these grand personalities on stage, and we thought that it might be good to just have each of them speak for 5 to 10 minutes if he or she wants, okay? And then we open it to your questions. So, Eyal, we saw your documentary this afternoon. I'm not so sure whether many of the German public are actually familiar with the architecture of oppression in the West Bank that your documentary was featuring. We saw things like that we were explaining to the public settlements placed on hilltops, settler-only motorways, the endless numerous checkpoints, fences, the illegal wall. You have published a report titled Humanitarian Violence in Gaza. So the movie is 10 years old. The report, with two unlikely conceptions, humanitarian violence, where you could prove via satellite images, many pictures, situated testimonies on the ground that Israel actually camouflages its genocide under the guise of actions framed within humanitarian international law. So between the movie that we saw and this report, and I would love you to amplify on both, how did this journey into forensic architecture start back then, and how did it lead you to investigate from an architectural perspective and so much more the ongoing genocide in Gaza?
Thank you. I think that any one of you that have seen the documentary have seen settler colonialism in action. Settler colonialism from the perspective of architecture, which is my kind of home discipline. Home in the sense of something you leave, not something you stay in. Settler colonialism is the transformation of the built environment with the complementary act of construction and destruction. And to refer back to the lecture that Francesca and I were supposed to give tomorrow at the Freie Universität, the conditions of life calculated to destroy, I think that this is, obviously, it refers to one of the clauses, clause 2C of the Genocide Convention, that forbids the infliction on a group of conditions of life calculated to destroy them in all or in part. But I think the calculation of life and the calculation of conditions of life is actually almost synonymous with settler colonialism. This is what settler colonialism does. It calculates conditions of life, and it affects conditions of life in two separate ways. You've seen the settlements, colonies, built in that particular film in the West Bank, but we had colonies in Gaza, and we have colonies around Gaza that are actually a state project that is designed in order, so it improves conditions of life in order to move a population into and illegally settle areas that it occupies. At the same time, settler colonialism calculates to destroy the conditions of life of the colonized. The very nature of the Gaza Strip, what Gaza Strip is an engineered effort to destroy conditions of life within it. And this is not began in the genocide. The Gaza Strip is synonymous with a siege, and the siege, we're talking about a 20-year-old siege? No, the siege, Gaza Strip, the very idea of the Gaza Strip is the idea of a siege over 1% of Palestine, just over 1% of Palestine, into which 200,000 refugees have been put, into an experiment that continuously degrades, calculate to destroy conditions of life there in order to displace people from there. The very idea of de-development, the stopping of water, electricity, the destruction of any condition for the development in Gaza and anywhere else in Palestine is a calculated effort to displace Palestinians. So we have the conditions of life calculated is enacted through those kind of architecture, elements of architecture of control. Settlements, walls, checkpoints, barriers, and the siege that is operating through them. In the last 20 years, the conditions of life have been calculated in Gaza to the extent that calories have been modulated. The amount of calories have been calculated that Israel was allowing to bring in was calculated according to the number of people factored by gender and age. The amount of electricity and water have been calculated to what they call the humanitarian minimum. So the set of calculation, the leverage, the system in which life is calculated was already put in place. At the same time, on the other side of the fences around Gaza, Israel calculates condition of life in order to bring population there. It was not easy for the Israeli state to actually encourage the settlers, the colonies around Gaza to move there. It needed to actually amplify conditions of life there. It needed to give subsidies. It needed to move water from the north of Palestine to the south in order for people to live there. So you have a set of leverages which are the calculation of conditions of life, synonymous with settler colonialism. And everything that we're talking about here, ethnic cleansing, genocide, apartheid, are features of a settler colonial system. When you have those system of calculation, when you have those leverages already put in place, during the genocide, they've just been turned into maximum effect, right? So we are not speaking about a system that could spring into genocide out of nothing. All those systems of calculation and all the means by which they were afflicted were already there in place. When you are, so again, when you speak about that Article 2C of the Genocide Convention, that is most suitable to think about settler colonial genocide, you need to compare it to other ones. And when we were working in forensic architecture for the South Africa legal team in providing the report that was some 800-page report that was provided for the South Africa team for the legal case, we've noted very clearly the relation between the settler colonial genocide that is now unfolding in Gaza and two other ones that we were researching at the very same time. In June, I've delivered expert testimony in a genocide case in Guatemala. and we were working with Nama and Herero groups on the German imperial settler colonial genocide in the area now called Namibia. In both those places, very similar: destruction of the environment, the destruction of conditions of life with the means of killing. That clause, in which killing is not direct, this clause refers to destruction of any conditions that hold biological life, such as hospitals, and any conditions that maintain social, cultural life, like universities, schools, mosques, community centers. Those are affects violence applied on the environment transmutes that violence further. And what is absolutely clear when you look at that category of genocide is that the genocide is still ongoing. Conditions of life are still imposed on Gaza in order to destroy. We think that a ceasefire, whether it holds or doesn't hold, whether it leads to a permanent ceasefire or not, is the end of the genocide. But we are seeing a continuation of the very same logic, whether it is with this deranged plan that President Trump has floated, a completely deranged idea of displacing the entire population, in which reconstruction is presented as the continuation of destruction, with the same aim. So reconstruction is now the means of displacing Palestinians and completing what the genocide has not succeeded to do, but aimed to do, is to displace Palestinians from Gaza. And because of that, I think that we must be very tuned to the idea and to look very, very critically not only at this deranged plan of Trump, but at any attempt to present the genocide is over, or the stop of the genocide, that would not restore the conditions of life of Palestinians back in Palestine. And I think that any of those would need to look very critically and very strong at any proposals for reconstruction that seem, and most of those that I'm looking at now, seem to be simply continuation of the destruction that has been imposed and a completion of that logic.
No, just one element, and it's all. I mean, this is why I love speaking with Eyal about what has happened to Gaza, because we come from very different backgrounds and analytical frameworks, and still we speak and present the same reality. But there is just one element, if you allow me to take 1 minute, and it's the element of the land. Because the land, as I try to articulate in the report, Genocide as Colonial Erasure, is so significant to who the Palestinians are. And I say, looking also at other genocides, settler colonial genocides in history, to indigenous people, land is not the place where they live, is who they are. This is why we should be very careful not to underestimate the genocidal intent that continues to be carried forward through any logic, as Eyal was saying, of reconstruction, then in any case continue to eviscerate Palestinian presence from that land and sever the ties that the Palestinians have with it, physically, culturally, economically. And this is why the genocide is it has not only ended, but it continues, and it's leaking out into other parts of the occupied Palestinian territory.
But could I ask again, maybe you can give us a bit more of information on the actual report that is titled Humanitarian Violence in Gaza. Like, how did Israel do this? Frankly, when I saw it, needless to say, the first thing that comes to mind when seeing your report, your analysis from satellites, the situated testimonies, including Gaza and Abu Sita. This is something that the international community should be doing, that everyone should be doing, and you are doing this. Can you tell us more about the evidence?
I think, yes, I'll tell about the evidence, but first the principle that humanitarianism can be a double-edged sword. And if you think, again, about the genocide in Guatemala, has been articulated as a humanitarian project, as a re-education project. Think about all the synonyms of places that are genocidal spaces: reservation, protectorates, humanitarian zones, safe zones. They all seem to be things that are there to help the population, save the population. Think about the 13th of October 2023. On the same day, the president of Israel declares that there are no innocent people in Gaza. That means everybody could be killed. On the same day, the Israeli army evicts or orders the eviction of 1.1 million Palestinians north of Wadi Gaza into the south of Wadi Gaza. At the same day, they try to save, or they claim to save, and threaten to kill. Isn't there a contradiction between that? At the ICJ on the 12th of January 2024, Israel defended itself by saying, we have actually bombed Gaza with millions of A4 papers. They've bombed Gaza with millions of A4 papers. On each A4 paper, it started, for your safety. For your safety, leave your home and go into that area. That has been a death march. And because along the routes, and that is humanitarian violence, those bombs with papers, with A4 papers, have been more violent, have led to more destruction in Gaza than the bombs. I don't know more, but they have been a very important part in the destruction, in the genocide itself. Because humanitarianism, or not real humanitarians, but humanitarian language that pretends to be humanitarian, has led to enormous amount of death, destruction in there. So this is the principle of humanitarian violence. When humanitarianism becomes a trap, you say to people, this is a safe area, this is the safe road to go there. Along that road, we have documented attacks on civilians evacuating, according to Israel's own order, into an area that had no food, no sufficient food, no sufficient home, no sufficient services in there, in which, again, the amount of calories were calibrated. So this is humanitarian violence, when humanitarianism becomes actually a death trap. And there is no contradiction between Israel's president declaration that everybody in Gaza could be killed because there are no uninvolved, and the note on the same day that fell from the sky that said, for your safety.
Yeah, thank you, Eyal. Maybe we can bring the perspective on the ground from Qassem Massri. As I said, you went to Gaza in April 2024. You worked at the Kaman Adwan Hospital in Beit Lahia and at the European Hospital in Khan Yunis. You were speaking a lot about the casualties. We know by now the official number of casualties is 49,000 Palestinians, 160 journalists, 120 academics, more than 220 humanitarian aid workers. There is actually numbers that indicate that the actual death toll is much higher. You refer to The Lancet, one of the most prestigious medical journals. who speak about 180,000. There's other outlets that double that number. And actually, if someone listens to what you have to say from your daily life in the hospitals, the unimaginable facts that at the European hospital in Khan Yunis, there were 30,000 people at once. You were going to the operating room while people next to you in the aisles were cooking, trying to make a life under unimaginable circumstances. So please give us an account in your work in the last months, last year.
Yeah, the realities in the medical field goes directly as a continuation of the genocide. We talked about the land, the settlements, and all means of the destruction. And the destruction of the medical care system was one of the main means, one of the main tactics of unfolding this genocide. From 36 acting hospitals and medical facilities in Gaza, all of them were attacked. And it is a bit bitter because on the 17th of October 23, it was a very important day. Ghassan Abu Sitta stood in a press conference between dead bodies who were killed in the Baptist hospital. About 500 people have been killed. And he said today it stopped being a war, today it started being a genocide. And not even 2 hours later, some international NGOs started spreading the Israeli propaganda that this hospital was actually attacked by the Palestinians itself, which was proven completely wrong also in an extra film of forensic architecture. In the European hospital in Khan Yunis, which was actually the biggest hospital in the south at the moment, there were around 30,000 people living with us, literally living with us since months in the floors of the hospital. And they just cut away from the floor 1 meter to the right and to the left. They had their curtains and they managed their whole life behind their curtains. And it was the most normal thing that you go from the emergency room to the operation room, passing by where people are cooking, playing with their children, washing dishes, and they didn't even notice us anymore. And in July 24, the European hospital was evacuated and all these people had to leave within one night. It was one of the most horrible days at all in Khan Yunis. And up to the north, we were the first team who managed after 8 months to enter the north of Gaza. And we went to the Kamal Adwan Hospital, which actually a very small hospital. It used to be a birth clinic and a small pediatric department. And under the direction of Hussam Abu Safiya, who is actually now 57 days after his kidnapping by the Israeli army, and 69 medical workers of the team we worked with for more than 1 week, are still kidnapped, and we don't know anything about their fate. The whole hospital was set on fire, and in this 1 week, we saw so many patients who were directly targeted through attacks, but we saw much more patients. Like, I'm a pediatrician, but I had to deal with so many internal medicine cases for elderly people who didn't manage to see a doctor within so much time. This leads us to another numbers, because this here is about the so-called silent or indirect genocide. We are talking here about a time of 15 months where no Palestinian patient of normal diseases, something like heart diseases, kidney diseases, blood diseases, infection diseases, ever saw a doctor in this time. And in the Guardian in September 24, there was another publication about the number, which is estimated. It's 335,000. This is 15.2% of the Gaza population. If we apply these numbers to Germany, 12.5 million people would die. So it's beyond our understanding, but it is actually when you see that every single hospital in Gaza was attacked, like literally every single hospital. We are talking about a huge bloodshed on side of the medical workers. 1,069 doctors and nurses and medical workers were killed. So at the moment now, even if you rebuild the hospital, you wouldn't have enough doctors and specialists to help people in the ground, or to try to to overcome this vacuum of medical treatment which happened in this time. So one of the most heartbreaking moments was when you go into every single hospital, there's the yard of the hospital became always to a graveyard. It was used to bury the people because there was no capacity to keep these people in the hospital. So wherever you go, in every single hospital, you go just and you see these graveyards, which wasn't, and some hospitals it wasn't even possible, like the Baptist hospital. These were the same people who have been killed on the 17th of October, and I was there in April, and they couldn't be relocated into another cemetery, and I think the tragedy of the Baptist hospital is that it was actually the litmus test for Israel. We bombed this hospital with the name Baptist, and see what the world does. If there is any outrage, if there is any reaction, and unfortunately it was like massive silence on that. Like actually it was blaming the victim and saying that the Palestinians are the ones who made that attack. And of course, based on this moment, all the destruction of other Palestinian hospitals had to follow. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, that was the heartbreaking situation which we saw in the Kamal Adwan hospital. And I remember writing to Hussam Abu Safiya just 2 days before, and he said, yeah, may God help us. And I was still like, I had a bit of optimism that I will go back, because since May 24, no Palestinian doctor is allowed. And the definition of Palestinian is if your grandfather, grandmother, any grandparent was born on the historical land of Palestine, it means you are excluded from entering Gaza as a medical doctor, which leads us again to a huge discussion in the humanitarian aid about the concept of neutrality, which has been like really kicked with feet in the last months. And for me, it is like, as a Palestinian, I grew up in Gaza, and so I am adapted to the oppressive methods of Israel. Like, I don't expect anything of a racist apartheid regime, but for me it gives another level of pain when you see that international organizations are adopting exactly the same racist regulations, so that the open calls for doctors said clearly Palestinian roots are excluded. We just reimagine this line with any other nationality. Germans are excluded. And even like I am a German citizen. I know I am second, third class in best case, but I am a German citizen, and still I cannot manage to go to Gaza as a medical doctor. But I am qualified enough to lead an intensive care unit here in Germany. So it's a huge dilemma, but also like this needs to be said, that this concept of neutrality never ever applied to brown people, obviously. Like my last story, then I'm done. I applied in February 24 for a mission organized by a Berlin-based organization. And they asked me if I can go in February and not in April, and I said, okay, I'm in, I can change my work schedule. I changed my work schedule. I had 3 interviews, and in the last interview, the head of the mission, who's a former Swiss soldier, asked me, I would like to check on your neutrality. So let's say hypothetically, what happens if we get a call and you need to treat Israeli soldiers? And I was a little bit irritated. I said, "Are you recruiting for the Israeli army?" And he said, no, of course not. I said, "Okay, why are you making these hypothetical questions? Why do you think it's neutral when you put Israeli soldiers accused of of war crimes in front of international courts with my patients' children, in my case as a pediatrician, on the same level, and then telling me you are the neutral one and I cannot be neutral?" And I said that I am not going to Gaza to treat Israeli soldiers. And to be honest, a realistic scenario would have been that an Israeli soldier put a gun on my head and say, "Treat the other Israeli soldier, and if you don't treat them, you die." That's a realistic question. And a hypothetical question about... But the thing is that I got excluded. I got excluded for my answer. And I asked him, is it neutral not giving Palestinian children the qualitative medical work they deserve and they need at the moment? But I never got an answer to that email. But it's like, and then later they complained why no Arab doctors actually apply to them. It's like 76 years of settler colonialism, and now they are managing the tragedy around our lives, and they are wondering why I say, no, I am not willing necessarily to treat Israeli soldiers who killed 60 members of my family and my best friend. So sometimes it takes... From so-called humanitarian organizations, there is a level of dehumanization that I actually didn't see in other cases. I talked too much, thank you.
Connecting to what you said, like that the death regime includes so many people that are in need of regular medical treatment, people with a heart disease, with a kidney disease, people that, wouldn't have to die, but they did because, and this is the question that I would like to ask both of you actually, Eyal and Qassem, from your perspective. What about the evidence that Israel was targeting deliberately targeting medical equipment, something that you were referring to? We have numerous accounts, including Nissam Mahmoud, a British Palestinian surgeon who was speaking in front of a parliamentary committee, British parliamentary committee, speaking about these horrible quadcopter drones that were shooting on children already hurt by a bombing on the ground. And he said that this was something that he saw not as a single case, but day by day. It was a normality for him.
You want to start?
No.
So, I mean, there is, and we've heard it today, the indiscriminate bombing of civilians. But what about the role of technology for precision, for achieving exactly what you have been describing on the ground?
We went for a field visit to the Indonesian hospital in North Gaza. It's around 10 minutes away from Kamal Adwan Hospital. And it used to be the biggest hospital in North Gaza, what they call maximum treatment hospital with neurosurgery as well. And after the destruction of the Indonesian hospital, the Kamal Adwan Hospital became the one which had to step in with its very, very small pediatric intensive care unit of 6 beds, which they expanded to 10 beds. And they transferred the cesarean operation room into a functioning operation room. But they still had huge other problems with the sterilization of the instruments, which led to more infections and, of course, to death of many other patients. And we went to the Indonesian hospital, and when you go through the floors of the hospital inside the patient rooms, you still see the blood and the hair of the people on the walls. And I was wondering how that was possible, because in the time when the soldiers entered the hospital, there was no patients there anymore. But there is like the pearl of the Israeli weapon industry is Legion X, is a quadcopter, a small drone with a machine gun. And it's so small that it can maneuver into the floors of hospital, and it attacked patients in their beds, and that's why we saw this blood on the walls. And this technology is, of course, not only Israeli technology. It is like Elbit Systems, the one which is behind this misery, produces in England, but also works with Germany, or like ThyssenKrupp and Mercedes. But and this leads also to the question which was raised before about the German government. And I am one of the 5 people who have legal cases against the German government to stop the weapon exports. And it is ongoing since the 15th of February last year, so it's 1 year now. And now the Ministry of Defense answered that they actually delivered the parts for the drones, but it's not for war reasons. So and we are, the thing is still ongoing, and I'm of course we will not give up on this, and still, but it's absurd. So this technology is being used and optimized to kill as much people as possible. And we will see, of course, later in the weapon exhibitions that the Israeli numbers of like income and what they sell is getting high because of it was used in Gaza. We already proved that it can be used and can kill people, and yeah, it's a tale of misery.
Thank you.
I mean, we, as discussed, we've undertaken research mainly through medical professionals in Al-Shifa with our partners in Al-Haq, the Al-Haq Forensic Architecture Unit in the Indonesian hospital, in Al-Ahli, the Baptist. And we're looking at, different, the kind of the weapon exports into Israel also from Germany. Dimitra Andristou is here, who's done a big report on that at Forensis. But I start to think that all this precision rhetoric is kind of propaganda in that respect. What we're seeing, I mean, you have seen, everybody here has seen photographs of Jabalia, of Bet Lahia, of many parts of Gaza. The idea that Israel is using weapons that are able to make distinction, right? Distinction is a principle of international law. You make a distinction between civilians and combatants. We hear a lot about the computational and AI system capable of doing minute calculations of proportionality. How many civilians would be killed if we drop a half-a-ton bomb or a ton bomb at this place, at this particular time, at this particular location? All that discourse around that is a smokescreen, is sand in the eyes when you're looking at the kind of destruction that we are seeing, which is not only a destruction of building, it's a complete ungrounding, meaning conditions of life are held by the city, by architecture, by buildings, by institutions, by hospitals, by the infrastructure that sometimes, if you're lucky, goes under the surface. And all of that has been dug out completely. A bulldozer is going, stabbing its front loader half a meter into the ground and carries everything with it so that the bare soil is visible again. That bare soil is not a natural substance. Of course, soil is also conditions of life. We know that from other indigenous genocide, that soil is what colonizers are after. But that soil in Gaza has itself been poisoned by the toxins of the bombs and by, buildings are solid toxic waste. We've actually destroyed, or Israel has actually destroyed, conditions of life going forward decades into the future in one of the most agriculturally fertile part of Palestine, which is the northern Nakab and the Wadi Gaza basin. So, in a sense, this very idea of precision and the kind of the focus on precision doesn't allow us to understand the nature, the total nature of destruction that has been undertaken. So I think we need to handle that manifestation of technology kind of with the amount of an understanding that we are being led to think that the nature of that genocide, the nature of that war is different than what it is.
Thank you. Now, Francesca, if I remember correctly, you said we shouldn't be afraid of words, but of the deeds. Much of our battle is about words, it's about meanings, it's about prerogatives of interpretation, and it's frustrating, it's suffocating that we have such a heavy evidence of international law, of evidence that you've been recounting, and we're still fighting that kind of hazy wall of German discourse. So you've been saying about Israel that it is decontextualizing, that it is projecting, that is manipulating speech. This is something that we all know happens in Germany. It is exactly the same, decontextualizing, dehistoricizing. We see that what Israel says, Germany takes over one by one. We have what we hear in the news every day, like the talk about collateral damage, deplorable collateral damage of Palestinian lives, of the human shields. We hear that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and the absurdity that it doesn't need to take on the ICC charges because it has a functioning judicial system, so it can take over by itself. Inviting our two German panel members, maybe Michael, I start with you, connected to this battle of words that we need to deal with and we need to break somehow. You've been speaking about the genocidal language of the Israeli government. I remember you speaking about, Yoav Gallant speaking of human animals, of Netanyahu invoking Amalek, of Herzog saying that there is no such thing as civilians. So how do you deal with that haze in the German discourse, and how do you try to break it on a conceptual level, like try to get through?
Yeah, good evening. It's a difficult question. I mean, I think for the first part of what you were saying, I mean, we had Julia from Amnesty describe very clearly the kind of causal link between the genocidal statements that we've heard from here and from her, and that you've just mentioned. People with power of command. This is not just someone saying something that has no consequence. People with power of command. We see soldiers invoking these speeches in their actions. They film themselves, so we have the documents, and we see the result on the ground that has been described here now in the last 20 minutes. And this is causally linked. I think that's the point of the Amnesty report, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that making this clear in Germany is very important, because there's always this, also came in Julia's presentation, what Olaf Scholz said in the interview about the question that was, incidentally, the question that he was asked was not, is this genocide or not, because this is not, what he was asked is, what do you consider your responsibility, legal responsibility? What is your, if the ICJ in 4 years comes to the conclusion that this was in fact genocide, aren't you guilty of being complicit? You, I mean, you know, and he said that damit befasse ich mich nicht, or whatever he said, you know, das ist absurd, all these things. So how do you break through? I actually don't know. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. Apart from with other questions, perhaps. But how do you break through? The question, I think, how do you break through to, like, not to him, but to I think the German general public? I try as much as I can. This is all in my free time, so it's not a systematic enterprise. But I try in my free time to do two things. One, to amplify Palestinian voices that are there in Gaza or in the West Bank, to amplify them as much as possible, so people see them, to avoid what the current, at some point, the current foreign minister of Great Britain, when he said there are no journalists in Gaza, say things like this. So to make clear as much as possible every day that I do these things, that this is a lie. Right? So amplifying voices that are there, that are on the ground, that have something to contribute, and at the same time taking as much, this takes a lot more time even, is taking the reports that we get in German media and showing how they falsify the facts, how they treat sources that are partial as impartial. They present an IDF report as if it was a holy scripture, basically. It's not, it's to this point. So I try as much as possible to show how this is done and how things are omitted, specifically actually, data from the ground that is easily accessible. So that's what I try to do. As we all know, in a day like today, it's very hard also to get through, because I also try in my different groups, in my different activities, to reach out to press and to reach out to also to politicians in as much as possible, to get them to, in the case of the press, to get them to report on certain things. Like the cancellation of a UN Special Rapporteur in 2 German universities. That's ridiculous. We all think this, and it is ridiculous. But if you read the press, the German press, the Berlin press especially, but if you read the German press, it's not presented as ridiculous. It's presented as a completely normal occurrence, like it would happen in any other country. It hasn't happened in any other country, has it? No. So it's clearly not. Right?
Not that it has not been attempted. I mean, this army of, I call that them. No, what's coming next? The minions. They're everywhere. They're everywhere, and so it's just that. And there have been attempts at cancelling events. Just once in Montreal, we were eventually not given a venue. We were given a bigger venue. So yeah, no, it's pretty unique.
And I think also what's maybe important is to see and to also show the mechanisms of the way this is done. Why did Hannah Kienzler, Christine Binzel, and I write a letter to Kai Wegner and Ina Chibora, specific to them? Why? Because the moment this talk tomorrow was announced, they, through the press and also through probably phone calls, but mainly openly through the press, openly threatened, with the kind of things that, saying things like, I am sure the FU will take the right decision. Things like this. This is, this is mafia-style language. I'm sorry to say, it's not. Sorry. It's just. I only know this from film, you know. And so that's why we wrote to them specifically, because this is a form of intimidation that is completely outrageous, frankly. It doesn't mean that we got an answer, obviously. But I know we rarely get an answer. We wrote to them, we wrote to the FU, we also wrote to the LMU for last week's cancelled talk. And but although we don't get an answer, it gives me some kind of pleasure knowing that it annoys them a little bit every time we write them a letter. Yeah. I mean, that's more or less.
Thank you, Michael. Speaking of intimidation and resistance, would you like to speak about what I was not allowed to say? So, our dear Melanie Schweizer.
I would like to, first of all, say thank you, everyone, so much for being here. It means so much to all of us. I think we really craved this, and I know so many in this room, and how much it means to us now to be able to have this space and to speak. And I also want to apologize in the live stream for the about 300 people who paid for tickets and who were not able to come here now because due to intense and massive political pressure, as you know, the first venue cancelled on us this morning. Very unexpected, and we were giving refugee by the Junge Welt, and I just really want to say I'm sorry for this, that you had to pay, that you were denied. As the police is saying, this is a manifestation inside, so you were denied your right to manifest because of political pressure, apparently. And yes, for the rest of all of you, thank you for being here and for being our community and our safe haven. What is the manifestation? Rally. Yeah, this is considered a protest. By
humanitarian
police law.
Is in fact another thing, and they get repressed.
Yes, very much so. We're being Israelized. So I just also want to say something that you said a couple of days ago, defend the defenders. You know, this is so important. And Junge Welt is one defender. And I really would urge you all to make a subscription, to get an abo there. It's only a few euros, even if you don't have time to read. You know, this is one of the really few newspapers in Germany who's still doing their job, who are still reporting on things, who are still critical. When I studied political science and law, political science mainly, I learned that the media is supposed to be the fourth pillar of control in a democratic state. And I don't know what you think, but I don't feel that. I don't see that. The media is really not doing the job that I was hoping they would do, that I'm so craving for them to do, to criticize what is going on here, to shed and put a light on this repression, on this pressure that is put on us here, and on the people of Palestine. Really, I mean, this is insane. What is going on? It's simply insane. I keep saying I feel like I'm losing pieces of my soul, you know, for months. And while I was listening, you know, with your talks, for each segment that we had, I have images coming into my mind, you know, that burned inside my soul, really. When Leila was reading the poems, I was thinking about the children holding a press conference in Palestine, you know, begging for their lives. And I'm sure you all saw that. And then when you were speaking about the humanitarian violence, I was thinking about the flower massacre. And then when you were speaking about the hospital, I was thinking about the babies that decomposed to death. They were left to die in the hospitals. And this list is endless. Or when you were talking about the weapons, I was thinking about how this one journalist, I think he was asking you, or saying that, but if Israel signs a paper that it doesn't commit genocide or something like that, you know.
He was German.
Yeah, of course, he was German. Needless to say. And when Michael was talking about the language also, I'm thinking about Volker Beck. I think we all know him, the chair of the German-Israeli society who is permanently shaming and doxing people, and who was just a few weeks ago when babies were freezing to death in Gaza, he was putting a picture of the temperature in Gaza and saying, but it's not so cold, it's not possible, this is Hollywood, they were not dying, like freezing to death. Like this, the level of inhumanity that we have reached here in this country is, to me, it's appalling, it's abhorrent. It's I'm mortified and horrified by everything that I've seen, and yes, so to come back, maybe just a little bit. I mean, I really enjoyed and would love to talk more about Palestine, about Gaza and West Bank. What is going on in the West Bank now? It's the biggest expulsion of people since 1967. You know, you have to imagine that this is happening and no one cares. There's nothing really in our media. We are not discussing that. Where is the media? Why are they not doing their job? You know, I keep asking myself this. And then I see the police standing there, you know. They were swearing an oath, just like me, to this constitution. And how is it that you can deny the facts so much? You know, we keep talking about this. This is... So I studied law, and I am, you know, I kind of, as we lawyers, I think, Francesca, you can feel that we start to identify with the subject, or anyone, you know, with your profession, you internalize it. So I internalized our German constitution. I'm so proud of it. I think it's a beautiful law. It's a beautiful constitution. And this is I feel compelled, you know, and especially with my German history, to speak up when in the face of oppression, you know, when things go so wrong, we must speak up, and silence is complicity, and I think every one of us needs to do that, and I really don't get it, you know, how this feels like a never-ending Black Mirror episode, you know, horror after horror after horror. And just to connect the dots, as you were saying, I think also one time, is that this is a collective genocide. It is collective. It is not just Israel doing this. It is Israel doing it with the help of the USA, or mainly orchestrated by them, and Germany. Germany is the second largest weapon deliverer to Israel, and has been for months. And second largest means 45% of the weapons that are used there. And this is just, it's huge. It's completely enrages. And why are people not enraged? You know, I mean, of course, we all keep ourselves asking these questions, but I think we have to, for sure, keep doing this, because as we were seeing today, the mere fact of speaking the truth now has become an act of resistance. Speaking about facts in Germany, as much as the mere existence of the Palestinians is also an act of resistance. And as we have learned recently, it's apparently also anti-Semitic. And this is something we have to stand firmly against. And so for me, as a lawyer, as a trained lawyer or a judge, there's really no option than to speak out, and you know, I cannot control the consequence, and it's not even speaking out, it's the normal thing. This is international law. Our constitution international law is enshrined into our constitution. This is what the international institutions have found so far, so it is a no-brainer, basically. And there's no courage that you need in order to stay, you know, within the lines of this. The courage should be needed for the other ones to spread lies and propaganda, and not for us. And so, it's, you know, whatever comes after that, I cannot control it. But I know for myself that I need to be true to my profession, to my legal basis, and to the international law that I do really very much appreciate, and stay put.
Yes, of course.
just quickly, just want to add something. I think we've talked about. I mean, now it's wow, it's 10:20. We started at 3, and we've talked about a lot of things. I think what we I'm trying to think what we haven't covered, and what we haven't talked about is perhaps. So we have talked about the fact that Germany is complicit in genocide. We have talked about the fact that Germany continues to do so with great fervor and energy. What we haven't talked about is the why. I think which is an interesting question to ask oneself, because you have almost the totality of Parliament thinking this way. You have almost the totality of what is in German is dubbed die vierte Gewalt, the fourth estate, the press that thinks this way. So why is this? What happened? What makes this? And I think that I think for this we have to go and look at what is really a founding myth of the German Federal Republic post-war, which is to do with the fact that a founding myth. Every nation state has founding myths, and most of them are nonsense. They don't. It's not real. But they serve to give the state a certain image of itself. And in the case of Germany, we have committed the most horrific crimes. We have killed 6 million Jews, and to atone for this, we will support the unter Anführungsstriche, entre guillemets, collective Jew, which is Israel. This is the process, and this is the so to say the founding myth. So every red line that Israel would cross, where one would think, oh, this is where even for us Germans this goes too far. There is no red line. There is no end, because denying this would change Germany completely. It would not be this Germany that we live in. And I actually prepared a quote because Sami Khatib is here. He wrote an article, which is a very important article, called "Against Singularity," which treats this very topic. And if I may, he's a brilliant philosopher, a founding member of the Beirut Institute for Critical Analysis and Research. In this article, he writes, quote, "The credo of the anti-Palestinian sentiment in Germany is thus simple. The state that claims to speak in the name of those murdered in Germany's name cannot itself be a state of injustice. For if it were so, the calculation of moral reparation by the descendants of Germans from 1933 to 1945 would not add up. From the perspective of German Staatsräson, reason of state, the unconditional support of the State of Israel, regardless of the mode of its existence, proves Germany's success in moral redemption and material reparation for the Holocaust." I think that's... read the article. You want to have it?
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Like, to these questions, there is why they support Israel, but the other side is why do they hate Palestinians? And that's an important thing, because Palestinians, like, they have tried to be uprooted for the last 76 years, and damn it, they cannot be killed. And Palestinians are always the reminder for Germany that there is another side of the story, and that the Palestinians are the secondary victims of the Holocaust, and they actually never gave redemption to that.
Thank you so much for bringing this up, because this is the German peculiarity. This is the founding myth. Your dear colleague, Iris Heffetz, she was standing with a poster at a famous square here in Berlin, Hermannplatz. She was writing, "As a Jew and as an Israeli, this genocide is not happening in my name." Is she here, actually? Because she was... Okay, she couldn't make it. She's a psychoanalyst, and she wrote this brilliant piece when the Jewish voice for just peace in the Middle East was still everybody's darling in 2018. Or, I'm sorry, maybe this is the wrong word, but you were beloved. You received the Göttinger Friedenspreis, right?
Against a lot of people's wishes.
Against a lot of people's wishes, but still you received it. So
Actually, that same year was our first bank account freeze. So.
And the dog with the cafe, yeah?
Anxiously attached, I think.
Speaking about her article, she's writing exactly what you were saying, Michael. This idealized self-image of the Germans that have made their homework so well that they are. I was growing up. I'm half German, half Greek. Seeing particularly the German left as people with, of course, no flags, that despise nationalism, that think that they're so far away from the chauvinism, the degradation, the racism that comes with nationalism. And this is particularly the German left that comes with that self-righteousness, people that think that they are, have a post-colonial attitude, that make feminist foreign policy. It is exactly these people that have not only turned into warmongers, but is these self-righteous people that come to you, if you are a pro-Palestinian activist, and tell you, no, that cannot, it's like a cognitive dissonance. It doesn't work. Because, and this is what Edith brilliantly summarizes in her article, is that the idealized self-image of Israel is the other side of a coin, two sides. The other side is the idealized German self-image. So if Israel, in this idealized notion, has a crack, so has the German Erinnerungskultur, so has the German post-war identity. And this is why we see, including Scholz, Alexander Dobrin, we have so many conservative politicians that they enter a battle, and who will defend Israel in the wake of the most horrific evidence. Whatever you tell them, they will make it as a game. Who is stronger? Who will defend Israel? Who will say, no, if Netanyahu comes here, of course we will embrace him. And this is also the echo that you see in the broader media. That people have this self-righteousness. They obviously believe that if they do this, they're on the right side of history. They couldn't be more wrong. And Germany, as one of the many social media posts goes, is somehow managing to be always on the wrong side of history, but with a risen forefinger. And this is something that I think frustrates us all.
But there are two levels which are mingled here, namely the material interests of a state, which of course the political establishment of that state seeks to enforce and defend, and which are expressed in the production and selling of arms. It's an industry. It's something that different countries try to justify in different ways. And we heard about founding myths. And we should never forget that while in society, among individuals and groups, there are people who believe in this myth, there are also simply the ruling classes who use this myth as a tool to enforce their imperialist policy. The same way that, I don't know if you remember, about 20 or so years ago when the USA invaded Iraq and spoke about democratizing the Middle East. And of course, the leader of the free world and all this sort of thing, So one has to, I think, in order to fight things better, also kind of untangle things slightly. And to make it clear also who is using these things and who benefits from these things. So, okay, we have the individuals in civil society who draw a kind of personal moral benefit from saying, we've learned so much from our genocidal past that we are now good people by defending Israel. But then there are those who simply are very cynical about it. And we should never forget that, back in the early 1950s, Konrad Adenauer understood that rehabilitating Germany as a credible actor on the world stage and not a pariah state would in some way require establishing relations with Israel. And later on in an interview in 1965, he famously said that when he decided to make the reparations agreement with Israel in 1952, that he understood that even today, even after the war, one should not underestimate the influence of the Jews. And so, of course, he had to get on the right side of the Jews or the so-called Jewish state. And so that was always something that was used very cynically. And actually, when German politicians, for example, are constantly hammering out this mantra about Israel's right to exist, and actually even expecting immigrants who want to gain citizenship to, acknowledge this right, it's actually almost as if, no, it is actually they're begging for Germany's right to exist to be acknowledged, because if you base the legitimacy of your own state on its support for another, then they stand or fall together.
Thank you. Dear Francesca, would you like to have the last word? You have said so much, you've said it all in your keynote.
Yeah.
So,
would you like me to? I mean, I'm happy to answer a question. It's 10:35. Okay. So bear with me.
I think then we'll open it up, please, for your questions to everyone here.
Maybe while the mic reaches.
Thank you. Sorry, I actually had a question for your neighbor, Michael Barenboim, if you excuse me. I'm sure there will be questions for you afterwards. Yeah. No, it's about a topic that we haven't really addressed tonight. It's about your field. I want to thank you for the beautiful music you've played.
Thanks.
I remember the beginning of the Ukraine war, where many cultural institutions in Germany were very quick to speak up. Suddenly, Russian sopranos were not anymore welcome to perform at the opera. So I thought classical music can be political. If we, of course, it is easy. It's not very courageous because it was fully in line with government policy. But there was an element of politics in it. If we fast forward to Gaza, the silence is deafening. And of course that applies to many art sectors, but I am particularly struck by the behavior of classical music. Classical music or classical musicians invest their whole life, from childhood, early childhood, into their instruments. Their whole souls are invested in this. How can it be explained that such people can play such beautiful music and be completely insensitive to what's going on there? You are, in my eyes, the exception. I want to thank you for this.
Thank you.
Not the only exception. There are others, but it must be very strange to act in this field, to deal with colleagues. How do you deal with this?
Wow. Okay. So let's start with my industry, my classical music industry. So of course you are totally right. When the Ukraine war broke out, there were many charity concerts. Artists were speaking out very openly, very publicly from the classical music field. And in the case of the genocide in Gaza, they are not. Absolutely not. There's almost nobody that has dared to even utter a single word of anything in the last 16 months. And now that the genocide seems to have proliferated or metastasized to the West Bank, even less so. Why is this? Of course, you alluded. The answer was in your question. You alluded to it. It was very easy to support Ukrainians because it was government policy. And so, when the government policy and kind of the art institutions have the same aim, of course, it amplifies itself very, very easily. In this particular case, and we've spent really almost the whole day talking about this, there are many reasons why this is not the case. So an artist who does not only speaks out, but also wants to do something about this. So, for example, I'm part of an artist collective that organizes charity concerts for Gaza with different partners. We had Medico, for example, who are very active, but we had also other charities. I do this, right? But it's very lonely. It is actually very lonely, and there are very few of my colleagues who, even consider, doing something about basically using their privilege in the language that Francesca used at the end of her keynote, using their privilege as something that gives you also responsibility, because that's what this is about. Privilege means you have a responsibility and you have a duty, but my colleagues, most of them, don't see it this way. So how do I deal with it? I don't know how. I mean, what can I do? I go, I play. It makes me very sad, of course. The last part of your question, how can it be that people spend all their life, learning their instruments, that then they are completely incapable? Well, I mean, that also the answer is in the question. They've spent all their lives practicing their instruments. They've spent classic. You have to understand, a violinist like me, for the most part, has spent hours per day in a practice room, mostly without windows, scratching on this instrument, trying to play a scale in tune. It's really difficult to play the violin, right? And therefore, most classical musicians I know have absolutely no idea of a world outside of their craft. And I'm not even talking outside of classical music. I'm talking outside of violin music, right? So and it's very rare to actually find people that will engage with topics as serious as genocide. This is if that's not serious, I don't know what is, and therefore, expecting my colleagues to have read even just the executive summary of the Amnesty report would be a lot to expect. So that explains why there's no immediate urge. And the rest explains why they feel, the it's complicated thing. They don't want to engage beyond that. Yeah.
Sorry to maybe add something to that. I'm not a musician, obviously, but I just wanted to say, and I don't know, I didn't hear all of your keynote before, but what we have so far that I have listened, also not mentioned, is racism, I think, or maybe not to the necessary extent, racism in Germany. And because I wanted to mention this here now is because, of course, this is not limited to musicians, right? This is limited to all institutions in Germany. I think we all know how it went down when the Russian invasion in Ukraine started, that every single institution that we had in Germany, governmental and non-governmental, was issuing statements and things, and they were disinvited from the Olympic Games and so on and so forth. But this time, the people have fought so hard to get Israel out of the Olympic Games, the Eurovision Song Contest, and yet they were there, every single time during the whole genocide. And I know from also other colleagues that in the ministries there was huge wave of solidarity during this time in Ukraine, Russia, but during the Palestine genocide, there was no mention of it, nowhere, not in the halls, not anywhere. And I think we have to pin it down what this really is. This is racism. Really, it comes down, for me, to racism, because it wouldn't be possible. Because I think racism is the only thing that allows us to have selective empathy. If you, as you were saying, Qassem, and you were actually mentioning this a bit, if you divide people into classes and into more human and less human, and I mean they were openly saying that they are human animals, how much more visible do you need it? And people here were repeating it over and over again, and we cannot just, block out the anti-Muslim, anti-Arab racism and just climate that we are seeing here for decades now. This is also not new. So it's going hand in hand with the overall development that the fact is this is a world that is getting more and more racist against Muslim and Arab people. And so it's so easy to not see them as equal as to the civilized Western world, Because of that, 7th of October is always a barbaric massacre of the worst kind, and everything that happened after by Israel is self-defense. I mean, literally everything. And this is something that we need to talk about in this country. Why is it that on these I'm looking into your direction, genocide demonstrations, week after week after week, protesters are getting beaten up for offenses of freedom of speech? This is not normal. It's not normal to crash a protest and go in and beat people up. The normal thing is that you go there and speak, because it's a human being on your head high, and this is not happening there on a big scale. What I have seen when on other demonstrations, it's a completely different picture. How is this possible? This is only possible through racism, and because I heard you last time also talking about this, I don't know, because maybe you can also elaborate a little bit about this in relationship to the ongoing genocide.
Yes, and I would also like to share some personal consideration, because again, I am somewhat your cousin from the southern border. Although where I come from in Italy makes me sort of culturally more attuned to the Mediterranean than to here, seriously. Because in my country, to an extent, I can register the same level of indifference and ignorance in certain part of the population. A similar level of indifference and apathy among the political elite, which I also explain, as you do, Melanie, as racial bias. We don't see the Palestinians as we see the Israelis. Because the fact, and for me this is extremely problematic, because of course, I feel very touched. I felt very touched to see what was happening on October 7. Like any other human being, we are all shocked. And how it's possible that the killing of 17,000 children, 17,000 children, doesn't register with us. We don't even imagine them, let alone the teachers, the musicians, the university deans, the bakers, the painters, the doctors, the nurses. And it's not even just that, because also we don't need to empathize. We don't want to empathize. We assume that they are this sort of shapeless mass of humans, like they who have brought havoc upon themselves. The arrogance that I see in this part of the world is breathtaking. Because we assume. And even, again, look, I've been questioning my own country. I remember it was quite early, and I was called to speak about Gaza. And all of a sudden, I've never, although I don't like engaging with the media in my country, because it's less than here, but it's still very bad. So I'm called by a very, I'm told by everyone, don't go into the Italian TV because it's just like, they call it, it's like a souk, which is a very negative comment. Again, this is the racism, because there is nothing bad about a souk. It's very bad though. And people shout at each other. There is really no elegance, no grace, let alone a minimum understanding of facts, let alone international law. So in any case, I go invited to speak about the humanitarian impact in Gaza, and all of a sudden I see on the screen that it's a program about anti-Semitism, the spreading of anti-Semitism in Europe. And for 10 minutes, there is these facts that come from France, not even in Italy, from France, because in Italy we have not had really anti-Semitic attacks, like anti-Semitic attacks against, there might have been, but they are isolated incidents, and they should be treated as such, very seriously, because they have the same matrix. Attacking Jewish people because of their Jewishness has the same matrix, racism, that attacking Muslim people because they are Muslim or others. And it's this thing. So it was not even about that. It was something concerning France. And I was saying, I didn't engage. I said, can we move on and talk about Gaza? And all of a sudden, I was interrupted with this brutal question. Yeah, but what do you think of the slogan, from the river to the sea? And I didn't know what to say. I said, what it is? Where does it come from? Where does it come from? What do you think about that? It's a fact. I mean, there is the Holy Land is in between the river and the sea. And do you want me to understand what I... Depend whom you ask. Because if you ask Netanyahu, who 2 months ago went to the General Assembly with a map showing the land between the river and the sea, calling it Israel without the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, this is a way. No, but I'm talking of the Palestinians and the pro-Palestinian movement calling for the cancellation of... I said, I don't understand this is the case, because, for example, me and other special rapporteurs of the United Nations, independent experts, when we use this, and it has been also said in court, in one European court, that it's not a crime to say from the river to the sea, because it means, like my late dear friend, Israeli professor, history professor, genocide scholar, Alon Confino said, it's a fact that between the river and the sea, it's the Palestinians who do not have rights. It's the Palestinians who are subjected to apartheid in different forms and different ways. And asking for application of international law equally for the freedom and the rights of all, Muslim, Christian, Jews, Palestinians, Israelis. It's not about asking for the end of Jewishness in that land. It's to ask for rights instead of privileges, and for rights instead of oppression. What's that wrong about that? Isn't it about inclusiveness? Isn't it about... This is the beauty of justice, that it's something that can benefit everyone. But this is the problem, that if in this country, or in my country, we can't even talk about that. I'm telling you, the seeds for something that stinks have already been planted. And now you have to deal with it. And we have not even seen the worst of it. Both you and your Italian cousins, I'm afraid.
The only and the most important function of racism is distraction. And we are talking about the interpretation from the river to the sea. But actually, historically, it was invented to stop talking about the right of self-determination of Palestinian people. And now we are suddenly that a thought is more important than self-determination right of the Palestinians. So the importance of a thought or an idea, and on the other side, we put the Palestinian people. And this is exactly what is the aim of all of this discussion, because we talked, of course, about the right of self-determination, but we talk so much about the whole ideas they push onto us, and we try always to justify what we are not, and we forget what we are. So this is the first point. The second point, like, we make so many hypothetical hypotheses around what Germany is doing, what their motivations, and when I hear like some FDP politicians asking for making Gaza to a park slot, or just destroy everything, or a German journalist calling Palestinians even less than animals, one of Bundesverdienstkreuz. And I think sometimes it could be also that easy that these people actually have no values and they are simply assholes. So that's a possibility I just wanted to put into the space.
Yeah, but I think we shall not forget, again, there should be no tolerance for racism, because I don't mind that there are those characters you just described in the society, but when they hold positions of power, they need to refrain from, transplanting their personal opinion and racism into the public sphere that they occupy. And there shouldn't be a normalization of this, because again, no judgment on the Germans, okay? Don't feel sensitive. There is a lot of fragile ego in this part of the world. I'm talking of us Italians. We have been as bad, proportionally bad. For me, that's enough, okay? We have killed between 50,000, we have sent to die between 15,000 and 60,000 Jewish people, fellow citizens of my ancestors have been sent to die because they were Jewish. But again, I insist, this would have not been possible without the discrimination that had been planted and that had been cultivated over decades. So they were the stinky ones, they were the weird ones, they were the one with a big nose, and it was totally tolerated. There is scholarship about that. There is writing about that. We should be, I'm telling my fellow Italians, we should be able to understand that this is the seed for what I was telling you, that stinks, and when it spreads so fast, then when it's there, you cannot uproot it anymore that easily. Because meanwhile, it has already brought to the uprooting of fundamental rights and mechanisms to protect ourselves. But racism is ugly, and discrimination is ugly against anyone. And we should recognize it today, because in my own country, okay, the Jews were genocided because they represented the other in Europe. They were the other, non-Christian. This is the same reason why other groups, other indigenous people, like the Sami in Scandinavia, have always been discriminated against. And they were non-white, and they're very white. So what is non-white about that? The lack of purity according to Christianity. It comes from that. So this is our tradition. This is our history. This is why I say there is part of the trauma that also operates like a way as a form of severance between us and our past. So not comparing is a way not to analyze, not to empathize, not to create empathy between the past and the present. So I don't know, I think that we should be able to recognize that germ of as Italians, of course, with germ of racism that still travels across the DNA of our societies, and deal with it instead of repressing. And what is very, very awful of these past 15 months because again, the dehumanization of the Palestinians has been ongoing for a while. But over the past 15 months, Palestinians have been slaughtered, killed, blamed, and smeared. And the smear has traveled across borders, including here. I mean, and eventually, I don't even blame, I do blame, excuse me, anyone. I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but I also come from part of my family, which is not particularly wealthy, has been in the law enforcement, let's say the law enforcement, carabinieri. Part of my family has gone there. So it's, again, I do understand that there is this sense of executing orders, but there are limits. And we are not like mechanics. We are not machines. Where is our brain? Do we read newspapers? Do we understand what's happening inside in the rest of the world? We are human beings, and we should connect brain and heart, including in the work we do.
I don't know. I mean, I just want to make a small comment, because Francesca brought faith into it. And I think it's really important to look at it, because some of the function, some of the logic of the argument is to do with faith. And faith, the biggest test of faith is against evidence. To act, to believe against evidence. And in fact, the more evidence piles up, the more you can manifest your faith as negating that evidence, right? And to a certain extent, those people that bring the evidence are becoming heretics and need to be excluded and excommunicated. And I think something of that logic is here at play, in which the Jewish question is still seen here as a kind of morality play, rather than seeing people for their on all the diversities of opinion, a kind of theologizing of that issue, by which, for the protection of a kind of abstract theological construct of what a Jewish is, imposed on us, real politics on the ground is undertaken in Germany, in which, again, racial laws are being debated, discussed, now for the protection of the Jew. And this is a paradox that, in fact, makes Jewish life here more precarious, not safer. And same goes for the river and the sea, because we can speak about geography between the river and the sea, and that is Palestine, but it's also the Holy Land. And when you are when you're discussing the Holy Land in a way that is taking away from its faith of what it should be, you are creating a slogan that is acting as a kind of a strange magic power it has here. So you cannot say here, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It has a magical power. It will get you arrested to do that. Simply talking about freedom for all Palestinians in Palestine and in the diaspora that will return, the Jewish people that are there, calling for justice within that, has that power that cannot be explained without resorting to faith in understanding that kind of theological geography. And I think that issue needs to kind of come into the discussion, because at the end of the day, German policy is making Jewish life in Germany impossible.
Just one small addition. It's not just that it makes Jewish life impossible. It's the target. I think this you said earlier very clearly. The target here is Palestinians and their supporters, and that has to again, I think, to do with this. If Israel as this not really existing place, but a kind of fantasy that we are to support whatever happens. It's not. Most of them don't know have never been there or never seen pictures. They just the idea of Israel. It means that the presence of Palestinians, even their existence, is threatening, and that's why what's dangerous about the slogan is. What's dangerous about the slogan "From the river to the sea" is actually not the river, and it's not the sea. It's Palestine. That's what's so threatening. It's not that it's from the Spree to the Baltic Sea. There will be it's not the location. It's Palestine and Palestinians. That is what's threatening. I think that's what needs to always be present in people's minds.
And in fact, it's okay. It's not the first reality. I mean, it's like saying, for example, the Métis, the Inuit, and the First Nation call their the original homeland that is clearly being colonized, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's not okay, but they live together now. It's not okay, but they live together now, and they call it Turtle Island. Is it calling Turtle Island something as incitement to violence? Of course not. This is why I'm saying, can we go back to use our intelligence that has been cultivated? And again, I'm not trying to be provocative. I'm not trying to elicit a laughter. I'm really serious. Because if we continue to perform this form of self-indulgent stupidity, we will all pay the consequences of it. And again, I don't want to sound dramatic or pessimistic, but we have been there before. And we are fully equipped to protect ourselves. We have rights now that we didn't have 8 years ago. How come these rights are not protecting us? Because today, I don't call Palestinian supporters, because it's not about supporters. This is not a football match. Sorry, Michael. I think it's really about defenders. Here, whomever stands in solidarity with the Palestinians doesn't stand against the Israelis. There are not many, but there are Israelis who are standing against the genocide, against the occupation, against the apartheid. He's not the only one. And there are others who are fighting down there, and they are taking great risk. And these Israelis should not be invisibilized, which is happening here. And again, I think that it's very important to. It's been very liberating for many of you. I'm very good at reading the body language. It has been very liberating for many of you. Myself, okay, I felt part of the process tonight, but I do hope that there will be no retaliation, because this space. And again, I will always be with you as the crown jewels, as Kofi Annan, Secretary General Kofi Annan used to say, the crown jewels. He didn't only say crown jewels. He said the eyes and ears of the international community when human rights are violated. So I will never be too far away, one text away, one email away. So let me know if there is any reprisals after tonight.
I know it's late. I just also wanted to add onto all of that has been said before, because I think, so for me, growing up in Germany and having this, being German at the moment, I would just say it feels very strange, and I think a lot of this has to do, this distorted reality, this gaslighting. It almost feels like we are traumatized by our own trauma that we inflicted onto other people, and it feels a little bit onto perpetrator trauma here. And this is also a little bit on a global scale, because it's not just us Germans who behave like that. Other countries also ban the slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you know. On the first time when I heard this, on the demonstration, I went to the police officer, because I accompanied many demonstrations, and I was saying, like, are you serious? This can't be serious, because these people are occupied. They are occupied under international law. It's illegal. And you want to ban us from calling for their freedom? It seemed so surreal to me, you know. And then so many more surreal things happened, that our chancellor was saying, Israel is a democracy. It cannot commit genocide. And I'm thinking, why did I study law? That's so strange. Like, what? Like, if you are a judge, you cannot commit a crime. If you are a persecutor, yes, I get the gist. So,
what's going on? No. It's, I was just informed that the police was annoyed by these citations. They said it has come to possibly a point of no return, so we will.
Okay. We are almost done anyways, thank you. I just want to say one thing that adds up to the seeds you were saying and to the faith thing. You know, we are post-factum. This has nothing to do with facts anymore. And to me, it always reminds me to a violent relationship. You don't get hit into the face on the first day, you know. It starts with little things. It starts with disrespecting. And this is the same what we're seeing now in Germany. We have to fight for our rights now, because they are being taken away with this anti-Semitism resolution, which many call a shadow constitution, where hundreds and thousands of people were trying to prevent this from happening, because it actually really is dangerous for our democracy. So we have to really, really resist this, because sooner or later we will get hit into the face, and then it's too late for us to defend ourselves.
Thank you very much. So we have another 5 minutes. How do we round up such a...
We can talk. Annoying is the brutalization of Palestinians in the streets of Berlin.
We still have 5 minutes left, so let's just wrap it up, round it up. How do we round up such a magnificent round? Let me just start with resuming how this day started. Sorry for saying it again, but on the wall of Kühlhaus now it says, or hopefully it doesn't say it anymore, that Francesca Albanese. Okay, I will not say it, but it is. It also says UNRWA supports terror. Yeah, this also it says. But isn't it the most tragic travesty or irony of history that someone here that sits amongst us and deconstructs the pattern of any kind of racism, including anti-Semitism, which is hating Jews just because they are Jews, right? And all of you have contributed to this. What we learned is that a genocide doesn't happen overnight. It needs structures of oppression, on the one hand, on the ground. It needs dehumanizing, discriminating language. We feel we're subhuman. And this is something maybe we can take out of this. It doesn't always end in genocide. What happens in Gaza is horrific, tragic, but it is a human mechanism. It's group psychology. And you were referring to Rwanda, saying that the Hutus were called cockroaches, right? I remember from my research in Cyprus a sentence, the minority was called dirty and then dirt. Small grammatical difference with genocidal implications. We have seen this, we see this. It's a mechanism, it's universal, it's part of the human society, but we can break it. Because there is no singular enemy image. The people out there that we like to dehumanize and other. This is a mechanism. Let's break through.
Still more bothered by the fact, let alone what it's written, because seriously, it's not the point. I'm still bothered that a university called Frei cancelled our event. However, if I can close with a very positive note. You underestimate me. No, I was really hoping, I was really holding on because again, at a certain point I was told, even this has been cancelled. Everyone has put pressure. I'm not going to list anyone so as not to trigger more sensitivities. But however, I was telling people in my circle, I was saying, if we get there, we will demonstrate there is still oxygen. And the candle to burn, this light to burn, needs oxygen. So let's take this as an inspiration to move forward and bring the light on.
I just want to... Can you... okay, this is on. I just wanted to... one last thing that we have for Francesca here, because from the ministry, I'm used to, that when state officials or UN representatives come to a country, you... Sorry. Francesca. Sorry, you have to wait 1 second. So I was just saying that from... I know you have so many gifts. I was really trying to make it small, and I think a little bit metaphoric of Berlin at the moment. I'm scared. So this is like one of the most well-known familiar symbol in Berlin. It's the Ampelman, and it's in a cloud to see that we. So, and as I was saying, usually states do that, so we are the civil society representing, if I may say so, what we think, what states should do at the moment, defend international law and defend the Constitution. So, yes. No!
A little practical note, if you could all just listen for a minute. There is still a very substantial police presence around this entire building, and just try to avoid any kinds of provocation when you go outside. Try not to, I know this sounds ridiculous, leave in a disorderly fashion or something. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about. Try to avoid giving people an excuse to arrest you. Just, I don't know, go in groups, whatever. Look, I'm just saying, just pay attention to the servants of the Constitution, that they don't cause any trouble for you. Thank you.